Well, welcome everybody, and we're well aware that it's the Barocca session after last night's drink, so we do appreciate the fact that you were here. So I'm Deborah Young, the CEO of the Regtech Association, and for those of you that aren't familiar with us, we are a non-profit industry body, and we represent around 170 organisations from around the world. About 110 of those are Regtech companies, and that represents about 20% of the global pool of Regtechs. So I'm really delighted to be here today and have this fantastic panel. And we're talking about a customer journey, and using journey as a little bit of a theme, we're going to take you along a little bit of that journey this morning. And interestingly, joining me on stage today are 4 members of the association from New Zealand, and the companies were founded in New Zealand, Singapore, Australia and Ireland, so we truly have an international group here. So what would be really useful before we get underway, could I have a really quick, super quick show of hands if you can tell me whether you are a FinTech or a Regtech? Great. Financial institution? Oh, we've got a few. Great. Regulator? Excellent. Welcome. An investor? No investors? And advisor? Okay, so mostly FinTechs, Regtechs, financial institutions, and we have one regulator. Welcome to you all. So today we're going to give you a bit of an overview of Regtech and how a series of specialist firms have emerged to support financial services and the customer journey. And we're going to give some unique insights to each of these companies and their specific risk mitigation role. We're going to start with a few personal journey points, and then we'll quickly get into the customer journey that you're all here to talk about. And we have tried to structure the panel in a bit of a logical order, kind of a Regtech value chain, and hopefully that will become obvious as we go through. But one of the interesting things that I found in researching my panel is that there is a tie that binds them all, and as I introduce them, I'm going to mention what that is, and it was quite unexpected. Welcome Andrew Jackson, first AML. Andrew has a pedigree in customer success, head of sales in technology arenas, to his current role as country manager for Australia for First AML. I also discover in researching Andrew that he is a travel blogger. Now just bear with me on that point as I introduce Jacqueline Pang. Jacqueline is a seasoned C-suite executive with a strong track record in financial services, including in asset management. Jacqueline is now a co-founder and managing director of the Singapore-based Regtech RTS Global, and Jacqueline is our well-travelled overseas visitor as she's part of the Singapore delegation that's currently here for Intersekt. Welcome, Jacqueline. Erica Villanova. Congratulations are in order for Erica because we have FinTech royalty with us. She's fresh from her win as the female FinTech leader of the year that she won about 2 weeks ago. So congratulations, Erica. Erica has a background in risk management and she is the co-founder and CCO of Assurance Labs. And this theme continues because Erica is a volunteer at a hiking organisation. So bear with us as I introduce, last but certainly not least, this is not Brett Hodge, this is Owen Keating. Owen has stepped in for Brett, who wasn't able to be here for family reasons. But Owen is the Regional Director of Sales for Finergo. He has a deep technology background in Ireland, UK, Europe and now Australia. And the theme continues because I happen to know that Owen has just completed hiking the Camino in Spain and France. So he's done some recent hiking. Welcome, Owen. So now what I'm going to do, and I'm going to mention the time, which will hopefully keep all the speakers honest and also me honest. I'm going to give you 30 seconds each. If I can have a brief intro to your personal journey to Regtech and how you found yourself in the Regtech industry, and I'll start with you, Andrew.
Thanks. So my journey was one unexpected. I didn't really know much about Regtech. I was working in SaaS, selling email marketing to financial and professional service firms, and the opportunity to join First AML came along, and I saw a growing industry, but also by getting involved in an anti-money laundering move, I could help have a proper impact on wider society, because I think it's an unknown or an unappreciated piece in money laundering how prevalent it is, and society doesn't really see where it comes from and how it impacts them. So any little thing that I can do to help is kind of what got me excited about the role and the industry at large.
Yeah, great work. Jacqueline.
So hi, I used to work and head up investment operations and technology with asset management companies. And I used to get frustrated when I had to do regulatory reporting because there were really no tools, or few tools, right? And none at all for complex regimes in the marketplace that I could deploy. So one day, it dawned upon me that this was a great commercial opportunity. And I decided that I realized that I could build solutions that I would want to use as a practitioner. And that kickstarted my Regtech journey.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Erica.
So I started my journey at PwC, performing IT audits for the likes of IBM Westpac. I also have some experience at RBS working on one of their biggest remediation projects. So I've seen kind of like firsthand the human impact of what happens when regulations are flouted. I've also worked in sustainability, so reviewing recycling and water projects. So I guess Assurance Lab kind of like allows me to bring all of that experience and passion for ESG together by allowing us to perform, cybersecurity audits and also ESG. Bringing all of those skills together for me.
Thanks, Erica. Owen.
Good morning, everybody. So I've been in Finergo for 3 years now, but I actually worked with the founder of Finergo, Mark Murphy, back in Ireland 13 years ago. And I saw the growth of the company over the last 10 years. I've been living in Australia, from 4 people in Dublin to over 1,000 people now in 15 offices globally. And the purpose of the organisation of really protecting, financial services firm from a regulatory perspective, but also helping improve commerciality, client experience. So Mark approached me 3 years ago and asked me to join the Australian entity, and it's been very exciting, and we're continuing to grow at that pace, which is fantastic.
Yeah, thanks everybody. And I think this underlines the Regtech industry is made up of, a real powerhouse of people with deep knowledge and subject matter expertise. And that's what I find very enriching and enlightening in the cohort of fantastic people that are around me every day. So what we're going to do now is we're going to ask each of the organisations to actually talk about who their primary customer base is, what is the problem that they are solving, and what are the impacts that can be achieved by each of these solutions. And once again, I'll go in order. Andrew.
So in Australia, our client base is anyone in the financial service space, so anyone who's regulated by the Anti-Money Laundering Act. We specialise more in the complex side of anti-money laundering, KYC, so know your customer. So anybody who is onboarding investors, onboarding clients, and has to do that admin-heavy, burdensome process of due diligence. So if it's a simple retail consumer customer, a lot of that can be put through straight through processing technology, but where technology stops is where it gets into the murky, complex world. Maybe there's overseas funds. You will really want to get into the nitty-gritty of who you're working with if you want to work with them at all. And that's where we come in. So we remove that admin burden. We streamline what we can through technology, but we're backed up by a team of specialists who don't put anything back on our clients. They just say, okay, well, we'll uncover whatever you want us to, and then we'll present the entity or entities to the business to say if they want to or don't want to work with them.
Thanks, Andrew. RTS Global, Jacqueline.
Yes, so our company has got several products, including transaction monitoring, ESG reporting, as well as shareholding disclosure. And today I'll talk about shareholding disclosure, which is our flagship solution. So shareholding disclosure is a global and complex problem faced by institutional investors such as asset management companies, superannuation funds, insurance companies, banks, hedge funds, and basically any financial institution that has equity-related interest in capital markets. It is also one of the regulatory regimes that has the harshest of penalties. Failing to comply can lead to penalties that go beyond hefty fines to jail term for directors in some of the jurisdictions. there are altogether 100 plus jurisdictions that require shareholding disclosure. And there are subtle differences in the regulations across jurisdictions. So let me just give you a couple of examples. Each jurisdiction will define the level at which you will have to report and aggregate your shareholding. Now, is this at the group level, the entity level, the fund group level, and in some jurisdictions, multiple levels? Okay, another example would be in the calculation of the percentage of shares for your denominator. Do you use total outstanding shares, total voting rights, class outstanding shares, class voting rights, or some other value? Now, these are just some of the permutations that you have to contend with. There are many others. And every single one of them needs reading, understanding, tracking in order to be in compliance. So to top it all off, in a single jurisdiction, there could be multiple rule regimes. For example, in Australia, you will have substantial shareholding disclosure for long positions, and you have a different set of rules that apply for short selling, for takeover, for sensitive industries, and so on and so forth. And all this is covered by our solution. We deliver a simple solution that makes it simple for you, and it basically works with out of the box rules. And if assuming data is ready, you can just pipe it in, plug and play. Setup is minimal, and our rule box is highly configurable and user-friendly and can cater to everything that you need. Yeah, so that pretty much sums up shareholding disclosure and the solution that we bring to the market. Thank you.
Thanks, Jacqueline. Erica, can you identify your customer base and the impact that your solution is having, and a little bit about your solution?
Yeah, so the problem we're really trying to solve is trust. In Australia and all around the world, we've got a lot of SMEs, SaaS companies who have great products, but in order to sell their products, they need to build trust with their enterprise customers. And one way of doing that is by performing audits. So, for example, great products. If I'm a bank, I won't really want to onboard you unless I can trust that you will keep my customers' data safe. So we help SMEs build that trust by providing, auditing them against kind of like a SOC 2, ISO 27001, etc. And we, perform those audits in an SME-friendly way. So we do it without disrupting your business. We really work with the SMEs to make sure that, yes, they're ticking off kind of like the requirements, but in a way that suits their business and doesn't just become an admin burden. And of course, we use Regtech technology to facilitate all of that. Audit work is not always glamorous and fun, so we try to automate all the boring stuff out of it. So yeah, in the end, it makes it a lot easier for us, a lot smoother for our clients especially, and it allows them to build trust with their customers, enter new markets. If you're in Australia and you have a SOC 2, for example, you want to expand into the US, that really gets your foot in the door. If you want to go to Europe, for example, you're going to have to comply with GDPR. That's something we help with as well. So it's really about enabling SMEs, helping them build trust with their customers through an audit report that's transparent, so that they can, build trust that, yes, we will keep your customers' data safe, pretty much.
Yeah, so great. And I think what's really interesting about what you're saying is we often think about Regtech potentially just having applications to large institutions, but here we see that there's applications for small to medium companies as well. Owen.
Yeah, great. So Finergo offers client lifecycle management to financial institutions. So we only operate with financial institutions, and we sort of say we're an inch wide, but we're a mile deep. And what we do from a regulatory perspective is we help look at things like AML, KYC, tax, OTC derivative reform, investor protection, risk, and the likes of ESG, which is becoming quite popular. So we look at financial institutions and we help them with any client type. So it could be an institution, a corporate, it could be a retail bank or a wealth, across any event that may happen. So the onboarding or the opening of account, or the maintenance or the ongoing due diligence, or the offboarding of those accounts. And that's what we call client lifecycle management.
Great, well done. So what we're going to do for the next 10 minutes or so, I have a very long list of questions, and you may as well have some brewing, and we will allow some time at the end for those questions. But it's a question, and I'm going to encourage the panel to talk to one another as well as to you. Let's see how we go getting through this very long list that I have here. But one for all of you to answer. What's your view on the greatest challenge that you were seeing from a client's perspective that has a hard impact on them being able to serve their own stakeholders or customer base? And I might flip it the other way and start with you, Owen.
Yeah, so look, absolutely. I saw there's a few people here from banks and financial institutions, and dealing with the ever-changing avalanche of regulatory requirements is huge, right? And the impact that has on client experience and operational efficiencies and trying to stay up to date. So what FinErgo have done, a lot like yourselves in the Regtech Association, is very much a community approach, so compliance by design. So how can we, mutualize that cost of staying compliant by working as a group together on how to stay compliant, how to manage the compliance, and then what FinErgo does is we come in and automate and straight through process a lot of that through the platform.
Thanks.
Yeah, I think on that compliance piece, I see a number of firms who try and take on too much internally, and I understand it can be a very confusing landscape out there with all of the technologies. If you look at a website for a technology that's, say, very different to us, it might seem to say they do exactly the same thing as us. So it's sometimes people don't know where to look, and that not only slows down their ability to keep up with the compliance changes, but it slows down the experience for whoever their end customers are. So I think we as an industry can probably do an even better job at working out where we have complementary and competitive offerings, so then we make it clearer for firms out there that we work with, okay, this is what you need to look at to make your investor onboarding, your client onboarding more pain-free, but to protect your business as well.
Yeah, spot on. It's an ecosystem approach, but you're absolutely right. It's identifying how that ecosystem works together.
Yeah, and I totally agree with Owen, right? I think the biggest challenge is how do you keep on top of regulations? How do you apply those regulatory changes, right, to your data? And, what kind of, are you able to meet the reporting timelines? Are you able to mitigate risk? And, it's not just about customer experience, right? It's also about, are you managing your reputation? Yeah.
It's similar in the audit space, so there are lots of different standards that big enterprise customers, I guess, demand from their vendors, and a lot of this is according to their geography, but there's actually quite a lot of overlap. So, for example, GDPR has a lot of overlap with CCPA. So I guess what we do for our customers is we perform just the one audit. We make sure we, we understand where the overlaps are. Cover the edge cases, but in terms of our customers, they only have to do the audit once instead of getting two separate audits, wasting time and effort, kind of like providing the same thing twice. So we really try to blend the standards, blend the audit approach to really recognize, make the most out of those efficiencies and overlaps between the different standards.
Yeah, thanks very much. And just on some of the earlier points that were made too, I think that's the power of being part of an industry body like FinTech Australia and like the Regtech Association, in that it can help that peer-to-peer sharing and learning and collaboration. So fantastic to hear. Now I'm just conscious of the time. It seems to fly by really quickly, so I'm going to cherry pick from this list of questions, and I do want to talk about ESG, but I might open up with a question here about what's the right way to think of return on investment when it comes to Regtech software. So for the people in the room that might be thinking about that investment, how should they be thinking about that? And I might ask you that, Erica.
I guess for us, when we get approached by our clients, it's because they've been asked for a SOC 2 report. So I guess there's one way to just get the audit done, but actually if you really put in the time investment in it, you can get a lot more out than just simply having an audit report. So you can use the opportunity for real process improvement and really get your SaaS company to mature to the next level. So if you want to make the most out of it, don't just tick the boxes, really actually invest in the process and see it as a way to help your organization become more mature and be better placed to to face increasing number of regulations if you've set the right foundations.
Yeah, I think I'd also say firms have to be open to looking at, if they're going to onboard a piece of technology, looking at what their costs are right now and not just saying, oh, well, it's a sunk cost because we've got someone who does that for us. It's like, well, what else goes into making sure that you've got redundancies if somebody is ill? How do you manage that person? What do you do if you grow? Because it's not just Regtech isn't just a line item, say, okay, it's going to cost you 50 grand a year, and oh, well, we don't have that budget. Yeah. So we speak to a lot of firms and say, let's actually get into the costs you have now and the challenges that come from that if it falls over, or say if a business wants to grow. It's not just, we want to sell you something, so here's a bit of money. We truly want to add value, but you have to understand where your business is at that time and place.
Yeah, spot on. I think getting to the root cause of what's actually causing the cost to go up, and a lot of times it's looked maybe from the outside, but not what's underlying that, such as the need to collect all these data and documents and the need to stay compliant. So you're absolutely right, Andrew.
Yeah, can I just add also that there is always the intangible cost to consider. So, I was talking about risk, right? I mean, there are not enough compliance expertise in the market. How are we going to deal with a regulatory landscape that's just evolving faster and getting more complex? And if you don't have solutions, right, like what Andrew was mentioning, to do the heavy lifting, then how are you going to deal with, right, the complexities that really needs, right, the human brain to think about and deal with? So is that included in the ROI? I think there needs to be qualitative qualifications as well, right, when we look at the numbers, so that we see things in context when a decision is being taken. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I'm just conscious of time, and we do want to allow enough time for questions, but I did want to just kind of finish the formal part of the panel on a question of ESG, because I think ESG is going to have growing impact in the Regtech industry, and indeed on the whole idea of a customer journey. ESG is playing a very critical role in institutions right now across an entire spectrum, and that includes things like attracting key talent, giving shareholder value, engaging customers who are highly tuned to climate sustainability and good governance, tracking and mapping of ESG exposures to achieve specific goals, and Regtech can help with this. So if I could just quickly get 30 seconds from each of you, do you have some insights around the role that Regtechs have to play in upholding a very strong ESG framework? Owen?
Yeah, so I mean, we did a survey last year of our clients. We work with some of the largest institutions in the world, and ESG came up as number one. So from our perspective, there's a lot of a similarity with what we do with the likes of KYC, and a similar DNA in the collection of that data and the documents, reusing data in the market, and being able to offer the clients the ability to look at their customer base, to be able to assess the ESG rating and to be able to onboard them, whether it's a mandatory process like the SFDR in the EU or policies here locally to help with that. So it's quite a big thing, but it's definitely the biggest thing going forward.
Great work.
I think one of the biggest risks with ESG is greenwashing. A lot of companies may talk about their ESG credentials, but as we find out more about these greenwashing, people get, what do you call it? What's the word? I guess they don't trust it anymore. So I think the role of audits is really key in that. And for us, in terms of like the market that we serve, a lot of the sustainability standards are out there, like SASB, ISB. They're really focused on the big end of town. But just because you're a small to medium business doesn't mean there's anything there's nothing you can do around ESG. So we've actually developed a framework that's kind of like suited to that, so you can make steps towards it. And similar to what you said, Deborah, a lot of enterprise customers are actually looking down their supply chain. And you can definitely use it as a differentiator. It's where SOC 2 was 10 years ago. So you can use, yes, I'm secure, and also I've got ESG, and it's been audited, so you can trust that this is actually what I'm doing.
Yeah. So I think I was reading up on ESG, right? And they were saying that by the year 2025, $53 trillion of assets will be under some kind of ESG mandate. Yep. So I think this is going to be a huge playing field. And definitely there's a role for Regtech. I think Regtech, our roles are to, our solutions are really for transparency, for consistency, and for reporting, right? And that is really at the heart of ESG, if you think about it. And and I'm sure as the regulations evolve across different jurisdictions, again, there's going to be inconsistencies in the regulations. There's going to be differences. There's going to be market data. There's going to be data gaps. Now, how are you going to deal with all that? And as you migrate from your existing ESG policy to the regulations, I would really suggest that have a look around at the solutions that are in the market that can help you to do that.
Super quick response, Andrew.
No. I'll pass the time over to you so we can get some other questions, because I just completely agree with what everyone said.
Great work. So are there any questions from the audience? Otherwise, I have a lot on my sheet here, and we can get a mic. We can get a mic down to you. Thank you.
Just sorry, Jacqueline, to your point and to the audience, do you see a consensus being formed around ESG? Because there are many different frameworks or bodies that claim ESG frameworks, but there isn't a consensus yet. Is an ISO standard being formed? Do we see that there will be at least a Western version of a consensus of what ESG compliance does look like?
I mean, seeing how regulations have evolved, right, in the past 30 years, it will take time to come to consensus. And I think it will just be sprouting out sporadically across different jurisdictions, right? And typically, there will be certain jurisdictions that are frequently aligned. For example, I noticed that Australian and Hong Kong regulations are very close. Yeah, but I think it will take time for us to come to a global standard, as in all things.
Yeah, and I think on that, firms shouldn't wait for a regulation standard to come around. It's the same in the AML space. So right now, it's only in Australia financial institutions regulated, legal, accounting, real estate. They're not regulated. It doesn't mean that firms shouldn't make sure they're doing their piece to stop the money laundering, but to protect their business from financial and reputational risk. I think the more firms can do right away, and then they're already ahead, so they'll start to influence that regulation as opposed to waiting for it whenever it comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think our association is putting quite a bit of time and effort into the whole area of ESG and helping everybody to unpack that. And early next year we'll be launching a new series. It's like an education series around ESG, and inviting people to come in and to learn from some subject matter experts about how to begin to unpack it. But also from a Regtech perspective, how do you speak to an institution now? Because potentially you could be speaking to a whole new audience within an institution. So they're climate people, they're sustainability people, when previously you may have only been speaking to their pure compliance or risk people. So it really does open up new opportunities for new conversations, which has, a quite profound impact on the title and that's, that protection of customers at the end of the day. So I think we are right on time. So I wanted to ask the audience, thank you very much for being here at our Barocca session this morning. And I wanted to ask you to join me in thanking my fantastic panel.